In this demonstration, you learn how to block the deletion of friends who are part of a meeting. Let's switch to Visual Studio. Before we implement the logic to block the deletion of a friend who is part of a meeting, let's run the application and let's see how the current behavior is. I create a new friend, and the friend is called Brian Lagunas. I hit the Save button. Now I go to the Learn WPF meeting and I add Brian to that meeting. Now I click Save again to save this meeting. Now let's go back to Brian Lagunas and let's delete that friend. Yes, I'm sure I want to delete him. I go back to the Learn WPF meeting and you see Brian is gone. Now I want to implement the logic that the user can't delete a friend as long as this friend is part of a meeting. So let's stop the application and let's go to the friend detail view model. In the friend detail view model, we override the onDeleteExecute method from the detail view model base class. Here we have the logic to delete the friend. Now before we execute this whole code block, we need to check if the friend is part of a meeting. To implement this check, I have already extended the friend repository. So when I open up the friend repository, you can see that this repository has a new method that is called hasMeetingsAsync, and it takes the friend ID as a parameter. In this method, I grab the meetings DB set and I use asNoTracking as I don't want the context to track the meetings. For every meeting, I include all the friends. Then I use the anyAsync method to check if any meeting exists with this condition. I grab the friends of a meeting and I check if any of the friends of the meeting has the friend ID that I got as a parameter. So if we have any meeting in the database that has a friend with this friend ID, this method will return true, else it will return false. I also went to the iFriend repository interface, which is used by the friend detail view model, and I have also added this method here. Now when a meeting exists, I want to display a message box to the user. So I have also extended the message dialog service. This service contains a new method, showInfoDialog, that is just used to display a simple text. As you can see, internally it just calls messageboxShow. I have also added this method to the iMessageDialog service. Here you see showInfoDialog. Now we can go back to the friend detail view model, and here at the beginning of the onDeleteExecute method I paste a little snippet. I call the hasMeetingsAsync method of the friend repository with the ID of the friend that is displayed by this friend detail view model. If this hasMeetingsAsync method returns true, I show an info dialog that includes the first name and last name of the friend in the message. The message says, the friend can't be deleted as this friend is part of at least one meeting. Then I jump out of this method by using the return statement here. So now let's run the application again and let's see if this works. I create a new friend and I call the friend again Brian Lagunas. I click Save and I go to my Learn WPF meeting. I select Brian and I add him to this meeting and I click Save. Let's go to watching soccer and let's go back, and you can see Brian is part of this meeting. Now I go back to the friend Brian Lagunas and I click the delete button here. Now I get the message Brian Lagunas can't be deleted as this friend is part of at least one meeting. That's true. Now let's go back to the Learn WPF meeting. I remove him from here and I click Save. And I go back to the friend. Now I click the delete button and I get the question, do you really want to delete the friend Brian Lagunas? I click OK and the friend has been deleted. Now the logic works as expected. So now we are done with our meeting detail view and the meeting detail view model. We have implemented this pick list in this module. Let's wrap up what you have learned. You learned in this module how to build the pick list in the Friend Organizer application. You know how to build the UI in the meeting detail view, and you also learned how to implement the logic in the meeting detail view model. In the last clip you have also seen how to block the deletion of friends who are part of a meeting. Now we are done with the meeting detail view and the meeting detail view model. In the next module, we will switch the whole Friend Organizer application to a tabbed user interface. Then you will see that we get some new issues in the meeting detail view and the meeting detail view model that are caused by this new tabbed user interface. Welcome to the module Switching to a Tabbed UI. My name is Thomas Claudius Huber, and in this module I will show you how you can switch the Friend Organizer application to a tabbed user interface. Currently, the Friend Organizer application can only display a single detail view, either the Friend detail view or the Meeting detail view. In this module, you'll learn how to display multiple detail views at the same time in different tabs. Let me show you the module outline. You learn in this module how to adjust the main view model of the Friend Organizer application to support multiple detail view models. Then you will add a tab control to the main window that is using the detail view models property of the main view model. You will also learn how to display a title for friends and meetings in the tab header. When we are able to display the detail view models in tabs, the user also needs the functionality to close these tabs again. So you will learn how to implement the logic to close a tab in the Friend Organizer application. You will also learn how to refresh updated friends in the Meeting detail view. As the user can open up now friends and meetings at the same time, we need to ensure that everything is synchronized correctly. So when the user saves a friend and a meeting is open that contains that friend, the friend should also be updated on that Meeting detail view. You learn how to implement this by using events with the event aggregator. Now let's start with the main view model. In this demonstration, you will adjust the main view model so that it supports multiple detail view models. You will also add a tab control to the main window that is using the detail view models provided by the main view model. Finally, you learn how to display a title in the tab header for meetings and for friends. Let's switch to Visual Studio and let's start with the main view model. Here I've opened the Friend Organizer solution. Now let's open up the main view model of the Friend Organizer UI project. When I scroll down in the main view model, you can see that it has a detail view model property. So it provides a single detail view model to the user interface. But to create a tabbed user interface, we need to provide multiple detail view models. So we need a collection of detail view models. To provide this collection, I add here another property of type observable collection of iDetailViewModel. I call this property DetailViewModels. I press Ctrl dot to add a using directive for System Collections Object Model. I also remove the setter from this property as we want to initialize it directly in the constructor. So here in the constructor of the main view model, I just initialize our new DetailViewModels property with a new observable collection of iDetailViewModel. Now I scroll down again. We can still use this old DetailViewModel property for the selected DetailViewModel. But let's make this clear and let's rename it. I place the cursor on the property and I hit F2. I rename it to Selected DetailViewModel. I also rename the field. The field should have the name Selected DetailViewModel. I also remove the private keyword from the setter as we want to set this property from the tab control. Then I scroll down a bit to the onOpenDetailView method. Here we have the logic to display a message box if the user navigates away from the current item and the current item has changes. Then he can cancel the navigation. As we will open up tabs now, we never navigate away from a view, so we can remove this logic. Instead, we should find out if the detail view model is already opened. This means it should be already in our detail view models collection. So here on this detail view models collection, we can use the single or default method. I want to grab the view model where the ID is equal to the ID of the incoming OpenDetailView event args. This ID contains the ID of the item that has been clicked in the navigation view. So in our case, it's either a friend ID or a meeting ID. To ensure that we open up the correct detail view model, we also need to check on the view model's name. So on the view model, I call getType and I grab the name. I want to ensure that this name is equal to the view model name provided through the OpenDetailView event args. I store the result of this query in a detail view model variable. I place the cursor on the single or default method and I press Ctrl dot to add a using directive for systemLink, as systemLink contains the single or default extension method. Now you can see that the ID property is underlined in red, because the iDetailViewModel interface doesn't contain such a property. I place the cursor on the property and I press Ctrl dot to generate this property in the iDetailViewModel interface. Now I hit F12 to navigate to the property and we see it here. I don't want to use a nullable int, so I remove the question mark. I also don't need to set this property from the main view model, so I remove the setter. Now let's go to the DetailViewModel base class that implements this iDetailViewModel interface. Here in this class, I just add a new property that I call ID. _ID is the backing field and the property is just called ID. And I make the setter protected. I cut the field from here and I scroll up and I paste it here where the other fields are. Now I go to the friend DetailViewModel that inherits from DetailViewModel base and I open up the loadAsync method. After the friend has been loaded or created, I just set the new ID property to the ID of that friend. Now I also go to the onSaveExecute method, and after the friend has been saved, I also refresh that new ID property with the ID of the saved friend. I do exactly the same in the meeting DetailViewModel. So here I open up the loadAsync method as well, and after the meeting has been loaded or created, I just initialize the ID property with the ID of the meeting. Now I also go to the onSaveExecute method, and after the meeting has been saved, I refresh the ID property with the ID of the saved meeting. Now let's go back to the main view model where we started. Now here we have grabbed the DetailViewModel by ID and viewModel name. If the DetailViewModel didn't exist in the DetailViewModels property, we need to create it and add it to this property. This will open up a tab in the user interface, as the DetailViewModels property will be used as a source for the tab control. So let's add a check here. If the DetailViewModel variable is null, this means it didn't exist in the DetailViewModels observable collection, and so no tab is open in the user interface. So now we have to create a new DetailViewModel. And we can just use this DetailViewModel creator that creates the DetailViewModel by viewModel name. So I cut this from here and I paste it here. Next we need to call the loadAsync method on this DetailViewModel. Exactly what we do already here in this last line of this method. So I cut it and I paste it here, and I use here the DetailViewModel variable. Finally, we need to ensure that a tab is opened for this DetailViewModel, so we just add it to our DetailViewModels observable collection. And at the end, we set the DetailViewModel as selected DetailViewModel, so this will select the tab item in the user interface. So whenever the user clicks an item in the navigation, this onOpenDetailView method is called. If no DetailViewModel exists, we create one inside of this if statement. And whether the DetailViewModel existed or not, we will set it at the end as selected DetailViewModel. So when the user clicks an item in the navigation, the tab for this item will be selected. Now let's scroll down a bit, and here we have also the afterDetailDeleted method, where we set the selected DetailViewModel property to null. But this is old code. This was originally the DetailViewModel property, which was set to null. But instead of setting this property to null, we need to remove the DetailViewModel from our DetailViewModels collection so that the tab will disappear from the user interface. This means, in other words, we need to grab the correct DetailViewModel again. So I scroll up again to the onOpenDetailView method and I just copy our single or default method call here. I scroll down to the afterDetailDeleted method and I paste that method call here. Now I check if the DetailViewModel variable is not null. If that's the case, we need to remove this DetailViewModel from our DetailViewModels observable collection. Now we are done in the main view model and this code should work. Let's continue in the main window and let's add a tab control.